Well, welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. Welcome to another Battlestar Galactica video. This has proven to be a good choice for me. Had a lot of very positive reaction to my first Why I Love Battlestar Galactica video. And I thought, yeah, I'm gonna do more of these. So you got more of this stuff coming. In this one, I wanted to talk about one of the very first impacts that Galactica had on me that was surprising as like a Star Wars fan. I was very much in enjoyment of the idea of a sci-fi TV show, and this is going to be really, really great. We've got something like X-Wing, something like droids, something like stormtroopers. Fantastic. But I remember, now I'm like 10 to 12 years old when the show came out, and I remember there was a little part of me that thought, why, in my head, our two lead characters, Apollo and Starbuck, seem to be not... The easy answer is, or the easy comparison is, well, they're just cookie cutters of what we've seen in Star Wars. No! In fact, for me, it was kind of the opposite thing, opposite experience. I remember thinking to myself, you know what's very impressive about Richard Hatch as Apollo and Dirk Benedict as Starbuck is the makers of the show, and I don't know if this is the writers, the casting, the actors themselves. It's a combination of all of those. What we ended up with on screen was very much, it's like we took, in the case of Apollo, it's like we took a guy that looks like Han Solo, but we made him like Luke Skywalker. And in the case of Starbuck, it's like we took somebody who looks like Luke Skywalker and turns him into Han Solo. There's like a weird cross-connect of Apollo is this... I mean, on the basic level, I mean, remember, I'm just a little kid, right? So for me, it's like, oh yeah, dark hair, a very... Richard Hatch did hit a vibe of like being very much like Harrison Ford. So Apollo looked like Han Solo. And he was not as a character. He was different enough. These are both very different characters. But I remember thinking to myself, Apollo is kind of like Luke Skywalker, maybe not in the first movie, maybe by Empire Strikes Back, when Luke is now a commander and he's got troops that follow his orders and that kind of thing. Apollo, being a captain, would give commands. He's out there in his Viper and he's telling Starbuck, go and attack that guy. Boomer, you go and do that. And we're going to take on the Cylons or whoever it is we're encountering this week. But he also still has that pure heart of a hero. He's a good person. He has heroic elements. There is a nobility to him. I mean, definitely when you consider he is the son of Adama, the commander of the fleet. There is this good guy, prodigal son element, which certainly by The Empire Strikes Back, we're seeing that in Luke Skywalker. Not only in command of a bunch of characters, but that prodigal son thing echoes pretty heavily in The Empire Strikes Back, for anybody who knows that story. So, I remember thinking to myself, even though Apollo looks like Han Solo, he is way more a Luke Skywalker character. On the flip side, and this is definitely true, Dirk Benedict's Starbuck looked like Luke. Not just because he's blonde, but he's like the younger of the two characters. I mean, maybe... Is there anything that establishes in the show that Apollo was actually older than Starbuck? I don't recall. I know Apollo has a younger brother, and that doesn't pay out very well for him. But there is this, like, Apollo and Starbuck, they seem like they're about the same age, but there's something about, maybe it's just Dirk Benedict's looks. I don't know. He had a very boyish sort of charm to him. And that worked well as a character because he felt younger. For an audience member, Starbuck felt younger than Apollo. And as a result, for me, looking at both of the characters portrayed by their relevant actors, Starbuck seemed younger than Apollo, and he's blonde, so that's a Luke character. Like, just an immediate assumption. Starbuck is Luke. But in personality, no, he's the brash, smuggler, space pirate type. He's a gambler, he smokes, he drinks, he's a womanizer, he's the rogue of the two. So again, we've got this weird contradiction of like Apollo being the noble, heroic son of the commander, dark-haired leader type. He's got a son. There's a whole responsibility. That's the word I'm looking for. Apollo is responsible, like Luke. Maybe not initially, but certainly throughout the arc of the trilogy for Star Wars, Luke learns responsibility. By the time Return of the Jedi comes along, he's echoing like, I have this mantle that I'm carrying, and I must go and rescue my friends. Apollo is that, but he looks like Han Solo. Flip side, Starbuck definitely was the chaotic kind of shoot from the hip type of guy, but a younger, looking up to Apollo type. I think I felt. I mean, they certainly came across as like buds, chums, pals, but there were many times Apollo had to tell Starbuck and Boomer, get in line, and they would. Like, there was an obedience factor. So for me, as a kid, this was important because it taught me to open up my mind to other ideas for tropes, for characters, for what we're seeing on screen. It actually would come in handy years later, a decade later, when Star Trek The Next Generation came along, and I talked about this a little while ago with, is Star Trek about Kirk? When I saw the new crew for the Enterprise D, and Picard as the captain and Riker as the first officer, I was just like, this is different. This is a different crew. This is a different vibe we're going for. But I was benefiting from how Apollo and Starbuck in Galactica were already opening my eyes to, hey, not everything has to be what it was before. You don't have to have Kirk as your captain and Spock as the first officer. You can open up to different characters playing these different roles. And in Galactica's case, okay, we might have been like dealing with an original storyline and all that stuff. But again, for all the comparisons to Star Wars, I remember thinking to myself, yeah, Apollo is kind of like Luke, but he looks like Han. And Starbuck is kind of like Han, but he looks like Luke. There's this crossing of the wires, which to a little kid was difficult to wrestle with. Luckily, through the charm of the characters, the adventures that they went on, the way that show was so good, it won me over, and I was suddenly able to open up my eyes to go, yeah, there's a universe of possibilities for different characters to come along and fit those same slots in the puzzle piece, but look different, act different, and be different. So I just wanted to talk about a very formative part of Battlestar Galactica for me, and how this was the first time, I'm pretty sure, that I was open to somebody else can do it. You know what this is. You've seen this before, but don't be so precious. Don't be so clawing at, no, it was done this way perfectly the first time. Don't anybody ever do it again. No, you can have different characters in a similar vibe and have a good time. So, that was it. Just wanted to talk about that. There's plenty more Galactica where this came from, but for now I'm going to leave it. So, until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.